Thank you for joining this call. This is our regular bi-monthly call for the community for DSATS. Let's start. So for the sake of time, even though I don't think we're going to be hard pressed at the end, we have only one technical update today. So here is the agenda. Plan to use the first 30 minutes or so, give the latest on the section, normal activities, regular update, and then we have a technical presentation from by Loic Poirot with the Schlumberger. He's going to give us an update of the work that these guys are doing in DWIS for developing a standard interface to issue downlink commands. So any provider will be able to connect to any rig if they follow this standard and issue a downlink command to a rotary steerable or to an MWD tool or whatever. So this is work in progress. Obviously, Loic is going to give us an update where they are up to now. This fits in the bigger picture of DWIS, for interoperability. Okay, having said that, let me start with the update for the membership numbers for the year. This is year over year, 22-23. You can see up to the end of April last month. We're slightly ahead of last year, which is encouraging. I think this is the same for all technical sections and for SPE as a whole. The industry is doing better now the last couple of years, so that's what the numbers reflect. One good trend that continues, and I'm grateful for that, is that the number of student members that we have is significantly higher. If last year was a good year, this year is even better, much better. You can see here the bottom right graph. So that's very encouraging. And I'd like to recognize Enrique and Roman Shore and our university relations group for keeping this up. And of course, SPE for allowing students to be now full members of the technical section. So that's a factor for that. But that's a healthy trend overall. The second shot here doesn't change much month after month. It shows the distribution of our membership across the different areas, with the two biggest ones being the Gulf Coast here and the Middle East. But some good numbers elsewhere, North Sea, Africa, etc. Service companies still are represented, have the biggest representation, but all in all, we have also some operators and some contractors. So it's healthy. And the age-wise, I think still the older guys are more than the younger guys. So we have to kind of reverse, hopefully, these two bars here. But it's not a terrible looking distribution here. Okay, so that's about the membership. Good numbers there. The next couple of slides, maybe Maury can walk us through, shows the activity and the level of interaction that we have in the new website that we run in parallel. Go ahead there, Maury.
Yeah, I think maybe just a couple of things on this. One, we continue to have numbers 10 times in excess of what we had from the old site, but you do see some contraction there from February through April. March is a bit of an outlier because we had the SPE IEDC event. So, we had an awful lot of site sessions as people came in to register for that, which was great. But, what I would say is the contraction, in order to keep people coming to the site, we need to post content that's specific to DSATS. I think one thing I would like to do is to have one of the subcommittee chairs on a monthly basis post like a blog entry of what they're doing now, what their intent is, something like 200 words with some kind of graphic of some sort to show it. And we can put almost, I hate to use the term blog, but we could put some kind of material onto the website. People can come and see what the different teams are doing. I don't think we should do everybody all at once. It'd be too much.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I throw it out to the subcommittee chairs to, if you're interested in writing something, then reach out to myself and Edgard, and we can help you with that, and we can put some material up there.
Yeah. Before we continue, Maury, I think there is a question. Robert, please.
Well, not a question, but a remark. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Regarding to the student membership, and I'm not sure if that comes later as well. I heard a rather disturbing news from the European side, is that Norway, the Netherlands, and Denmark ordered the petroleum studies to be seized, stop operating at universities. So all students, this year students of this year will be the last. After that, the study will be abolished. And I do not use these terms lightly, but I think it's a, let me put it politically, a bloody disgrace that because of the mood of the day, complete studies are basically being told to stop.
Yeah.
I double checked it, it's true. So at least for Denmark and the Netherlands, Norway, I'm not completely sure, but I guess it's in line of things. So just FYI, that I don't think that the same situation exists here in the United States, but that's happening on that side of the world.
It's going to be it seems to me, it sounds like the planet transition. You know that for the next 20, 30 years, whatever, they think that they can handle with the people that they have already. And that opens many, I agree that it's bad for the industry, but it opens opportunities for students from other countries to go and fill these gaps.
Yeah, but not the knowledge will be gone from those countries.
Yeah.
So that will be then focused in the United States, maybe Saudi, Middle East area, maybe in the Far East. I don't know, but it's I don't think they realize what they're doing and the enormous effect it will have on. From their perspective, it's a logical step. But I think universities should be free to choose whatever, even if it's not. There's many studies I don't agree with, let me put it this way, but they have a perfect right to be offered at universities. And this is just a step too far. So just FYI.
Interesting. Thank you,
Robert. It's outrageous, Robert. Unbelievable that they would do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's censorship.
Yeah, well, yeah, and they of course it's nowhere official, but yeah. Anyway, if you look it up, they it doesn't exist anymore there.
Yeah.
One more slide here, Maury. You want to talk us through that?
Oh, this one must have come from Edgard.
Yeah.
I don't know if Edgard's on the call. So yeah, look, I think we've been posting entries in the forum, and you see activity here, but quite honestly, if I look at the active participants in the forum discussions, it's myself, Edgard, Demetrius, and John DeWard. And I think Fred might have posted as well at one point, but we're not really seeing the discussion element from the forum side coming out. So I don't really know whether it's valuable keeping that. I don't think we remove it at this point, but Edgard and I are not going to focus on this over the next month. We're going to focus on getting content about what the different subcommittees are doing, and I think is the key. So, and it comes back to it. I really, thinking about it again, I think it was done with the right intention, but really that functionality, people use the LinkedIn DSATS website for that. So, it's almost a decision point whether we keep it or we just remove it and say, look, discussions happen on LinkedIn.
Most people seem to consume information rather than contribute.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting plenty of views of the opinions of 4 people. That's the problem. I get it. Nobody wants to put their name down and write a reply or a comment. So at some point we maybe need to make the decision that if it's not worth continuing the effort, then we should call it.
All right. Thank you, Maury. Sorry, going backwards. So continuing.
Sorry, Demetrius.
Yes,
Demetrius,
please.
Mark Anderson. That about the forums is true across all the other SPE technical sections.
Okay. So it's a pattern
Yeah, I
here.
think
Not,
Mark, do you want to just briefly talk about the efforts that you've been making around that, or is that coming later, or not?
I think this is a good time now to Mark to give us a brief update.
Yeah.
You want to say something, Mark, about the study that you did?
Yeah. All I did was I did a survey of all sorts of technical sections and then other subcommittees and other organizations. Actually, AADE was very forthcoming with how they use web-based tools. So in the general, discussion forums, videos, websites, things like that. And one of the things that's clear is discussion forums are not working at all across any of them. So it's just a functionality that people are not using. You have just a few people who are very vocal and no one else contributes. So that's it. The other thing is there's not one tool that works well for everything. So you need a mixture of things. Like for publicity, LinkedIn and direct email are the best ways to go. Yeah. So to get people to come to, say, this event, a LinkedIn post is about the best way you can do it. And then let people repost that for amplifying the message.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mark.
Yep. No one will come to your website to look for an event.
Yeah.
No. You have to go out to the people. LinkedIn and email are currently the best. And on 2 years it might be, two other vehicles.
I worked with Mark, provided some input along with many others and all of that. And Demetrius, my take on it, having gone through it, is we'll leave the forum up for a month. We're not going to add to it if there's zero contributions. I suggest we just take it down. We already have a link to the DSATS LinkedIn page on there. We can just make that more prominent.
Yeah. I'm wondering if it's worth pursuing, ads and messages, etc., through cell phones to try to reach people in the platform that they use all the time, right? Keep in their hand, at the end of their hand.
I don't know. I mean, I don't want to take up too much time in this. Anytime we add content to the website, depending how you've set up your preferences, you'll get either an email update when it's added, or you'll get a summary, an update as part of a summary on a weekly basis. I think it's best left like that. I personally, if I started getting messages to my phone about it, I would probably be switching off my access to it. I would get fed up quickly.
Fred?
But yeah.
I thought Fred has a comment.
Yeah, we've had comments available on the Drobotics website through the blogs. You can always comment on any of the blog posts. I think we've had 3 in 3 years.
Oh, wow.
One of them was from me.
You're one of the 4 on our site as well, Fred. Thank you.
All right, so let's move on. Some of the activities that we have in the group. So the verification and validation initiative that we started with Rodica, the group has been meeting regularly every couple of weeks. They came up with a charter. We put that for review. We went through a couple of iterations. The last step was that Pradeep and Ayappa had a few comments for the scope and the objectives of so we had a separate call, the 3 of us, Rodica, Pradeep, and myself, and we worked out through those suggestions. Basically, the resolution was that Pradeep had a bigger scope in mind than what the group can absorb at this point. The group was hesitant to take a bigger chunk of work than what they can deliver. And they they wanted to keep the focus, to keep the scope of work a little bit more focused so they can deliver something meaningful. And we came to an agreement, basically, and the charter will stay the way it was delivered, and the work that Pradeep had in mind will come in as a follow-up, phase 2 of this work. So that's where it is right now, and based on this, and given the votes that we had on the website already, the charter is approved, and the VNV now is a subcommittee formally of DSATS. Just for those that are not familiar, the objective here is to create a foundation, to establish a common vocabulary and open a dialogue of what needs to happen and for not for one specific application, but in general for validating and verifying the different components that come into the picture when we talk about drilling automation, whether they come from a provider, a piece of software, or from the rig, the contractor, or from a vendor of a drilling control system. All these pieces, typically what happens is they are being tested individually, but nobody is really doing any work of what happens when you plug all those together and how they interact and how stable the system is and how it performs. And of course, there are many specific applications that take place when that happens. And this group, this VNV group, cannot handle all of these applications, but they can write the requirements of what needs to happen, what tests need to happen before we say, okay, now we're comfortable that these systems will work together. Whether that includes a simulator, a virtual testing, whether it includes, how they exchange data, what is the logic that is implemented in each one of those modules inside, all that needs to be, we need to start capturing somewhere. So that's what the initial scope of work is. There is the document will be uploaded if it's not already at the website. And if anyone is interested to participate, please contact Rodica or myself, and everybody is welcome to join and contribute. The workload is not terrible, and I think the topic is very interesting. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. The next one comes from Sasi. I don't think he was able to join today, so that he passed an update. This is the latest on the drill robotics competition. End of school year, typically, as always, is when this will happen. End of June, early July. Here are the teams that are participating this year. There is, maybe Fred can give us a little bit more detail. There is a human factor aspect in this year's competition. That's really all I can add at this point. This is something that we have to, year over year, the participation is seems to be declining, unfortunately. Even the teams from Norway that have been very consistent, they seem to be dropping out. NTNU. I don't know, Fred, do you want to add something here?
NTNU decided to use their rig in a master's and doctoral research aspect rather than in a robotics competition. So they're still involved with the equipment, but not involved with the group. Okay. There were a number of teams in the United States, ULL, LSU, University of Houston, that started off this year but had to drop out. Some of them dropped out early, some of them dropped out later. And I think part of the problem there is that they're not well coached. We're not coaching them well. We're not teaching them what they need to do. They're not really good at going back and looking at the stuff that's online that the other teams have done. So they're trying to create it all over again. Yeah. So there's a lot of things I think that if we got enough people helping and had some mentors for some of these teams, we could have more involvement in the Group B.
No, I see Eric is here on the call, and he has, some input about how the competitions work. So Eric, if you wanna provide any feedback now or separately about how to make this better or more to improve the participation, you're always welcome.
Yeah, sure. As you know, UT hasn't participated in robotics for a while. The problem for me is that it creates kind of a disproportionate burden on students, right? That then they can't work on their master's and their PhD degrees, right? I can't give master's and PhD degrees for work on robotics.
Yeah.
And I need people to work on actual things that my rapid sponsors are interested in. So that has precluded me from working there. One suggestion that I have, overall, I'm supportive of robotics. I think it's a really good initiative to engage students. One thing that I've suggested, I've for instance talked to Dave Gibson about that, is that there is a bit of an artificial aspect to robotics, right? We build a miniature rig that we get to drill. It's not a real rig, right? It's not a real operation. That rig will never go out in the field and drill actually anything. It would be good for students to kind of get exposure to actual field data and do more with, for instance, analyzing data sets with machine learning and artificial intelligence. So something to think about is maybe broaden the competition with making data sets available to teams of students that then analyze those with kind of customized machine learning and artificial algorithms to, for instance, come up with the best optimization algorithms, right, that are independently judged. I think that's in the spirit of what is popular right now, right? And actually, that is something that I can give master's and PhD degrees for, right? Because that actually kind of elevates the science behind everything. So for something to consider, if we would find maybe a company or companies that would be willing to donate data sets, and of course what they would benefit directly from it if we have good student teams finding concrete optimization opportunities for them. And then you have students really working on actual drilling data, right? Not the artifice of a miniature rig.
That's very good suggestion, Eric. Thank you. I see we have a question from SPI group in Argentina. Please go ahead.
Yes, it's Eduardo here. I try to promote the robotics in Argentina, especially in Sun University. They are very happy with the concept, but then when they don't follow after that. I think that we need to improve the robotics webpage with some video explaining what can be done, how in a short video to explain what is the advantage to participate in robotics. Because I talked to the rector of the university, and they're very happy. Yes, it's very interesting, blah blah blah. But then I say, well, you have to go to the drillrobotics.com, and then nothing happened. You know, it's like we need to promote in a better way and in a shorter way. It's so many pages of the procedure and everything. Then I get that the people is lost in that, especially at the beginning, explaining is from the maybe one university that are using, they can promote and explain in some way that we can say, hey, this is the way, and this is the way that you are going to participate and to continue to do this kind of participation.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Nestor. Robert?
Yeah, regarding the data sets, Michael Behunek, is he on the call right now? I don't see him actually, but Apache basically already has now the standard that they provide all data to all participants in a well, provided you can make clear to them what you're going to use the data for. It has to have a positive effect, of course. I would highly recommend, if we go that route, to start with him, because it's a small step making the data available to participants in a well for free. I mean, there's no ifs and buts or whatever it is. It's just there. and then expand that to either the robotics or students or whatever it is, provided you can tell Apache in this case what you're aiming for.
Yeah.
It is not necessarily a result, but at least, hey, we want to see if there's something in there, yada yada yada. So
it sounds that this idea comes close to the OSDC work, the open source drilling community. Those guys there, they share models, but also data sets. And maybe there is some common ground between the work done in Drillbotics and OSDC, some overlap. We can use some of these data sets for other purposes as well, but for Drillbotics. Yeah.
And in that line of thought, I mean, I have only access to the more drilling, the top site related data. And any student that comes to us can get anything he would like. I mean, the gain we get by providing that information, it will be anonymized, of course, etc. But we might not have all the downhole data that is more specific for drill bombs.
Fred?
Yeah, the group from the wellbore positioning technical section, we're actually talking with them possibility of using a directional drilling simulator, and it might be in conjunction with the work that Eric's doing at DD Hub to actually work on some directional drilling models. And how will we be able to steer based on the data that you're talking about, Eric?
Mm-hmm.
So there may be a way of taking this not just for drilling optimization, but for some other value-driven operations.
Very good. Okay, John.
Yeah, quick question for Eric. On the robotics, would it? I mean, mines, for example, run it as a capstone project for undergrads. So would that not make sense, or rather than focusing on the masters and PhD? I'm sure if Rapid would support that.
No, sure. But the problem with capstone projects is that they're relatively short, right? They pretty much run for 2, maybe 3 months. And with undergraduates, they don't have a sufficient understanding of the intricacies of drilling, right, to put something meaningfully together. You need to get the grad students involved in Drillbotics if you want to have something meaningful at the end of it. So I think with capstone, the amount of time available and the proficiency knowledge of the students is an issue.
Okay, fair comment, but maybe it reflects that robotics has become beyond what it was originally intended to be. So something to discuss offline anyway.
Okay, good. Thank you, guys. So let's move on. The next initiative that is in progress is human factors. And this is a very broad term. This is something that Sachi has been very keen on for a while now. Just to summarize for everybody, we approached the human factors technical section of SPE, as well as HFES, Human Factors and Ergonomics Society, trying to see if we can establish an interaction there and bring in some expertise to help us identify first what part of the problem we're trying to address with, and then how we go about it. So Sashi went as far as getting a proposal from the chair of Human Factors Technical Section, who had his own external, let's say, vehicle or platform for doing this kind of work. Unfortunately, that didn't go through because these guys lost some resources and they couldn't anymore deliver, what they had proposed. So we went back to square zero, essentially, about where to start and how to proceed here. And the latest development is that we're trying to push this jointly with the ART, the Advanced Rig Technology Group of IADC, under the IADC umbrella. The reason for that is that the subsegment that is the most directly involved in this is the drilling contractors, because it's the rig crew and the driller and the rig personnel that are mostly affected by the introduction of these technologies, automation and drilling control systems and drilling advisors and blah blah blah. So they need to have some skin in the game, and for this reason we thought, okay, we have to drive this through IADC. There is a risk doing that, because if the IADC Executive Committee does not approve this proposal, then that pretty much turns off the drilling contractors, even if DSATS and SPE are willing to drive something like this forward. So that's where it is right now. It was presented to the IADC Executive Committee last week. Sasi and Nathan Morales from the ARC group are driving it, and we're waiting to see what kind of reaction we will get. Like I said at the beginning, this is a very big topic, very broad topic, and we have to start somewhere. We cannot tackle everything at once. We're not going to dictate to commercial vendors, how to write their software or how the screens need to look like, but instead we're going to try to develop some guidelines here of what are good practices, what lessons we can learn from other industries, how we make sure that we improve at least the situational awareness that we have, the level of situational awareness that we have today, etc. So it's going to be a generic work across different applications, not focused on one application, but identify some good practices that should be used both during the development of these systems as well as during the deployment and use of automated systems, to avoid some of the mistakes that happen today due to poor human factors engineering. So that's where it is. Hopefully we'll have some feedback for the next call. DSATS will participate as a partner in this initiative if it runs under IADC. And it's an open invitation for anyone who wants to participate and has something to contribute to come on board. Either contact myself or Sasi directly, or Nathan for that matter. And we'll look forward for people, for all these kind of initiatives. I'll be glad to answer any question. Yeah, John?
Yeah, just quickly, you mentioned it had gone to the executive committee. It hasn't. It only went, Sashi showed up to give a presentation to the art meeting last week, and he gave the presentation on it, and there was not a lot of discussion, but at the end, he'd unfortunately had to leave. At the end, I was there, and I brought it back up again and discussed it. And I think we've got the support of Blaine and Sarah to go ahead and submit it to the executive committee.
Okay. My apologies then. Yeah.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to flag that as a step. And in fact, what happened was there was a previous meeting, which was the DCS group led by Nathan, and he brought along Dr. Kurt Braun from BP, who has a strong background in human factors. He's only recently with BP. And these 5 areas are the 5 areas that he's recommended that people focus on for human factors in automation or drilling systems automation. And he was the one who suggested the first step should be to make an assessment guideline so people can evaluate their situations. The one thing we'll have to be careful of is not to get involved in competitive advantage, because then the drilling contractors will kind of turn it off. So we're focused on a guideline to do an assessment so you can learn your situation. And any further steps will be focused more on HSE issues, because that's really what we view as non-competitive. So yeah, I've been working with them on the proposal on drafting it up, and then Sashi wrote the last version, which is in the template for IADC. I think the other thing is, we have a difficulty in doing a formal collaboration because of SPE guidelines saying you can't do this and that without approval of the board. So we basically said that members of these other organizations should join the IADC initiative when it launches, because it's open to anybody and therefore the right people are involved.
Okay. Thank you, John. So that's where we stand on this initiative. Next, I have a few minutes updates on upcoming events. So we have one coming 10 days or so, an update, joint update by Eric, Carlos Damsky, and John McPherson on the work that they have been doing on the reading data quality and uncertainty. It's going to be a webinar. You can register through SP. You can register to that through the SP's website, and we have a few more spots open for the remaining of the year. And if anybody has something, technology development or some deployment, some field trial, etc., or feel free to contact me, and we can try to fill these spots. They are open. I have a few people in the pipeline for technical presentations, both as webinars or during these community calls, and we'll try to present, to share as much of this knowledge as possible throughout the year as we go. So along the same lines, there is the special session that Austin is putting together for the ATC in October. I think I saw Austin here on the call.
Yes, I'm here. I might have to jump off pretty soon. I was one of the ones that had to leave at 9, but the person I'm meeting with is late, so I can give a quick update. So we're from the original proposal, we had a 90-minute time slot that we were seeking to get, and given, I guess, the options that were available to us, we're pivoting to a 60-minute event that'll take place on Monday. I checked again with Greg and the SPE staff if we could get a more favorable time and still have the 90-minute section, but that wasn't the case. So we have we're going to have a 60-minute session. We're still working. We're going to have to slightly tweak the format of the event so that it'll actually fit into the 60 minutes. There's a group of people that are helping me kind of work through some of these concepts. Anybody that's on the call that would like to be part of that group, you're also welcome if you'd like to participate in that. But we have a couple meetings scheduled over the next 2 or 3 weeks, and I expect that we'll be able to come up with something that will really, I think the main thing that we're trying to achieve is, get younger people more involved and have, a bit of a networking opportunity by, bringing in some bigger names in our industry and having people to join in the event. So anyway, it's a little bit of a pivot from what we had previously, but given the time slots, I believe it's the best path forward to get the most participation and achieve the goal that we're trying to do, which is, get people that typically don't attend this event to attend. If anybody would go ahead, Dimitri.
No, that's fine. I'm sorry, Austin Giaco.
Yeah.
You have something else to add, or that's it, pretty much?
No, that's it, unless anybody has any questions.
Okay. Thank you, Austin. I think it's going to be an interesting event, especially for the younger people to network and learn some of these technologies, what's going on. All right, so let's see. So that's pretty much it for the regular update of the section activities. So the next part is the technical presentation from Loic. I see he's on the call. Loic, I have the slides, the latest version. I can go through them and you guide me, or if you want, you can share from your screen. It's up to you, really, how you prefer.
I can share. I think I made some quick update, so that's why. Let me try and share here. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, hold on. All right, thank you for inviting me, Dimitrios. So we wanted to give you an update of what we're doing in the DWIS group on the standardization of ADCS interfaces, and specifically on the use case of downlink. So as Dimitrios said, this is a work in progress right now. We had several sessions to brainstorm what we wanted, and wanted to share with you what we have. So my name is Loïc Waro. So I work for SLB. I've been with the company for 20 years now. Started working with the development of downhole tools, so LWD, MWD, and RSS. Did a stint in seismic manufacturing, and but for the last 5 years, been working for as a software project manager in DrillOps. So very interested in automation on drilling processes. So to start, I know a lot of you are involved in DWIS, but I wanted to give a quick recap of what DWIS is and is trying to accomplish. So it's basically an organization of oilfield professionals that are all coming together to come up with standardized to facilitate the connectivity and data exchanges on our system, on our rigs to facilitate the drilling, the well construction process. So we've all been involved in projects where we go on a rig and deploy, and it's always, I mean, a huge engineering effort that we deploy to have a solution that will only fit one rig. The issue is scaling. You're all aware of it, and we want to facilitate the scaling of those kind of projects by promoting standards, and therefore, I mean, reducing the amount of work that needs to happen at integration time. So reducing the amount of work for commissioning. I mean, a one-day commissioning would be fantastic on all of this project, and ultimately basically increase the automation that we have and enable new workflows and more elaborate workflows on remote operations as well. Right. So the DWIS organization is split into several work groups that are looking at different aspects of standard. I wanted just to show you where we fit in this architecture here. So there's one work group that is dedicated into working on this architecture, which basically is to promote how, I would say, multiple advisor application could work in a framework to send advices and perform, I would say, drilling processes in a coordinated way with all of these equipment. And where we fit in today is on the workstream 1, the DWIS interface standards. That's basically the interfaces to the ADCS that we're going to talk about. So this is it. This workstream 1. So the ADCS software interfaces. So how we are working on this group, basically we have a host of specific interfaces that we have identified and that we want to standardize. Here are the one that we've already worked on: hoist, rotate, circulate, drilling, and the one that of interest today, downlinking. So we start by say agreeing and defining an abstract model. So the reference data model that is expressed in an ideal language. So that model is to make sure that we agree on the concepts, the data that needs to flow back and forth, the commands that we would like to be able to send back and forth, and then this abstract model can basically be instantiated into reference implementations in the protocol of choice from vendors, and basically will let, I would say, the industry decide which reference implementation would be the most adapted to our needs and successful in the field. So yeah, reference implementation on some protocol, and eventually basically that could translate into vendors giving their SDK in their favorite programming language and programming platform as well. All right, now to downlinking, to the downlinking requirements. So for this particular aspect of the interface, this is what we were set out to do. So, I mean, downlinking is a process of sending a message to the downhole tool using, I would say, surface equipment to send a signal. For this interface to work, we would have to be completely agnostic to the downhole tool or the vendor. So we want to be able to send any kind of messages and pattern. We would like also this interface to let us use any equipment that is in control of the ADCS to be able to send this downlink message. Typically, basically, it would be the pumps or the top drive to do a flow or to do an RPM type of downlinking to a downhole tool. So one thing in our discussion that became also apparent is that the driller, the user, needs to be in the loop and needs to know what happens and when to basically allow a downlink operation to start. So the interface should provide the capability to notify the driller and the user, get its approval before the actual operation starts. Similarly, the driller should have and keep this ability to abort the downlink in the middle of the operation because conditions change and they want to perform something else, and even the third-party advisor could have the ability to abort the downlink in the middle because those conditions have changed. And the last point that I have here in the features is we wanted to have the flexibility of how to execute that downlink, and especially whether it's going to be done by the ADCS itself or by the advisor. We'll see that in the next slide. What we decided to keep outside of the specification is anything that references equipment that are outside the ADC control, the ADCS control. You could have, there's a multiple method to downlink to tools, and if you have some specific systems like well drilled pipe or acoustic telemetry that are typically alongside the ADCS but not directly in control, we didn't think it was useful at this stage in this version to notify and get communication of external equipment to the system. Similarly, also when not managing the downlink response, typically the downlink response is also decoded based on equipment that is not directly in control of the ADCS. So that is out of the scope for this this interface for now. All right, so now I'm basically going to the three main methods that we were discussing to enable this workflow. So the first one is what we call the symbol scripts. So that would be if you have a third-party advisor here on the left that is actually sending the complete definition of the pattern to the ADCS for the ADCS to execute. So sending all of the transition, the levels that are necessary, and let the ADCS discuss. So that's a method that is very, very flexible. And that would be the primary mean, that would be a first method of enabling this workflow. The second one that we have here is where the advisor is actually keeping the knowledge of the pattern to send internally and feeding it piecemeal to the ADCS, being in control of the timing of the transition to the equipment that is that it wants to use to send that message. So here on the slide, basically, I would use the example a flow state points, you still need to have this downlink interface authorization mechanism to be used by the advisor before starting the downlink process to meet the requirement that we had set up previously. And the last method that we wanted to allow through this interface is what we call here the symbol table. In that case, basically, the advisor vendor and the DCS vendor are exchanging, I would say, the full list of patterns that can be sent. So a table and agree on basically an index to reference those patterns. So that basically simplifies the communication between the advisor and the DCS, but it requires basically the parties to agree and exchange all of this data and maintain it offline. So we added this method mostly because we recognize that already in the field we have systems that are very close to this, and that would be the easiest way to upgrade to the proposed interface here if they wanted to use that method. All right, so now moving on basically to the reference model. So this is what you would have on our GitHub website, and describing here first the data that we would need for the status. So we define this structure where we have basically the requested downlink ID, a permission parameter, a downlink status parameter, and some ways also of understanding where we are in the completion of that downlink activity, with basically a % complete and also a duration. So this is data that would be accessible to anybody that can read from the ADCS and be able to know what is happening in terms of downlink on the platform. So for the request right now, the request is a bit more complicated. Has basically a method a big method where we're sending a lot of parameters to specify how we want to send a downlink. First one is a request status, whether it's going to be a new request or that we're aborting or completing the downlink. The method that which we saw on the previous slide with the three methods, whether it's going to be through the scripts, through a table and an index, or using the surface equipment and directly controlling the timing of the transition by the third-party advisor. We also specify the type, so that's to specify which equipment on the rig will be involved in making the downlink. So here we specify flow and rotation, and also the capability of doing it on bottom or off bottom, especially if the ADCS has this capability to, for instance, just go off bottom before performing and starting the operation. So that's a list that should be expanded, and we have capability for others, or even not defining it basically here. So the duration for the downlink and some optional parameters for delay if the downlink should not be executed immediately. There is some structure here for the specification data for either the symbols, so that would be, multi-dimensional arrays to send all of the transition, the timing of those transitions, the level of those transitions, and or multi-dimensional arrays also for using the index method table. So that's the index that is specifying the pattern that you want to send, but we could have also additional parameters to specify criteria like amplitude, bit period, or things like that. All right, so now just to show you how it will work in a simplified sequence diagram here. So here first using the symbol script method. So that's the method where we basically sending a downlink request and also sending all of the data to specify the how the pattern is going to be executed, the transition and levels. The ADCS receives a request, first set it permission as pending until basically the driller gets the notification and approves it. And in this scheme, basically it's the ADCS that will then take care of executing the downlink based on what on the definition it received with the equipment that is selected until it's actually completed. So this is a simplified script that's not showing absolutely everything in here. Then going to the main other method where we have basically we're using the surface equipment and the advisor for the timing. The system would be similar, initiated with a send downlink request with a new command, and the method for surface equipment again will be the ADCS will be sending the permission to pending until the driller actually gets a notification, approves it, and the permission is finally granted. At that point in this particular scheme, then the advisor would start sending the set points that it needs to the ADCS, relaying that to the equipment, and doing that during the timing that it needs until it's actually finished, and you would basically let the ADCS know that that the command is completed. Right. So that's for the that was for the reference model. So right now we have in progress a work on an OPCO implementation that's building on an OPCO model that we had already defined for the previous interfaces that we worked on. In this construct, basically, there's two main categories of objects, the observable and the controllables. So the observables are basically objects with metadata to know which kind of unit is associated to them, and you get basically their any client that's connected to it can connect, identify them, and read their value. And the controllable objects here are appearing in control groups and have infrastructure to let the ADCS basically give access to one client at a time to write to them. So I've defined here two other type of objects which are controllable that an external client can write the information to. So that's for our downlink request and our specification data. And oops, it's dark here. Yeah. Excuse me. Right, and that's basically trying to translate all the concept that we have in the reference model into a practical implementation. So that's where we are right now. Basically, we're in the middle of working on this interface. We need to continue and implement this OPCO model and test it, making sure that our assumption on the interface are actually valid. Ideally, we would have also other implementation on another protocol just to make sure that this model is actually solid and validating our use cases. We want to integrate that in future demos, and then the work will restart on new interfaces and new scopes. I mean, right now we have, I would say, those 5 interfaces that would meet the use cases of AOP optimization mainly, and downlinking. But there's a lot more that can be done and developed. So that's what I had for today. I want to thank all of the members of the workstream 1 that are contributing to this work and these discussions. I put that as well as references, links where you can find the work in progress on GitHub, and our reference on the DWIS website. All right,
thank you, Loic.
Let's
open it up for questions now. We have some time. Any questions from anyone about what Loic shared?
Yeah, this is John. I'll just speak. That was really clear, Loic. Thanks a lot for that. I'm obviously watching this and then realizing that this is really you've attacked the minimal viable product here, right? You stripped away a lot of stuff, and you mentioned it at the beginning. Then the auxiliary equipment, which would cover wired pipe, acoustic, and EM downlinking as well as bringing along auxiliary equipment to the well site. Do you all intend to address that in a later stage? Because the driller in particular has to be aware of what's going on there, I think.
Right. I mean, it's a good point, John, and thank you, because you've been also a large contributor to the ideas for this interface. Right now, I mean, the way that the discussions have been in the group, we wanted indeed to simplify and make it a smaller problem to attack. So for now, indeed, we have left out the auxiliary equipment in this version of the specification. I don't know at which state we would go back to the copy and reintegrate them, or if we decide to integrate them in different interface.
Okay. The other thing I noticed is that once a downlink is started, there's no way for an abort sequence to go back through to the ADC, to inform the advisor, hey, the driller pulled the plug, or the ADCS decided to abort it as well. I think that probably needs to be handled because it occurs quite often. So an advisor might start a downlink close to connection or something.
That's a use case that we want to definitely support and make sure that I mean, on the downlink status, basically things would be set by the ADCS to abort it. On the OPCUA, in the OPCUA model, if you're subscribing to downlink status and making and having your advisor have a callback to any change to that, you could do that like that. But yeah, that's definitely something that we'll need to demonstrate on a prototype.
Okay, thanks. That was a really good presentation. It's really clear. I very much like your diagram with the little pulse symbols going across.
Thank you very much.
If there are no other questions, maybe we can go back to the closing slides for the main deck. Thank you, Loic. It was so clear that there are no questions, you should be proud of that.
Well, I know that a lot of you have seen also this presentation previously, so.
Very good.
I have one question.
Yeah,
okay.
Sure.
Yes, thanks for the presentation, Loic. I would like to think and to have your comment about what will be the environment of the first trials. What is in your mind that this can be attractive for introduction in the drilling process?
To me, the most attractive use case would be for rotary steerable. These are typically operations where we send a lot of earnings, and would be probably the first candidates to use it in my mind.
Okay, and what range of condition, like deep water, of HPHT, geothermal? Because in some environments, rotary steerables, it needs to have a lot of tool status information, for downhole prevention and failures. And what will be in your mind? I agree with you that rotary steerable has all the time communication and downlinks on fly. You don't need to stop for connection to or start communicating. But for tool status in terms of preventing downhole failures, what will be your thinking about introducing your proposal?
I mean, this, I'm not sure I have a specific environment in mind. I would say we need to find, partners that are willing to try this out and implement that on the ADCS side and the advisor side. There are already a lot of companies out there that have their specific implementation, and basically building on top of what is the manual workflow today, where essentially you're basically having the driller doing those transitions manually based on the timing, even a stopwatch, right? So the first step could be as simple as just automating that with the software pieces, and that exists already. Now it's the key for that is to become a standard that is easy enough to implement by the ADCS vendors and the third-party advisor, and complete enough, basically, that it covers all of their needs. So I think that's really this sweet spot that we need to hit, basically, to make it successful.
Okay. Yeah, I'm giving you this from the view of an operator. I am drilling manager from an operator in Bolivia. We drill deep HPHT wells. And our challenge is to understand and some close to geothermal. And our challenge is like understand before failure, sometimes we just realize that the tool it's for fails and it communicates all the time, and we run Power Drive Vortex, all the jewelry from SLB, and then we at surface we saw like downhole failure and those stuff. So maybe your things in the near future will provide a good communication links and an easy way to understand more about premature downhole failures.
Right. I mean, there's definitely more that we need to improve on that front, and for the reliability of the operation. That's true.
Any other question before we move on? Okay.
No, I'm okay. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Loic. Yeah. So back to conclude the presentation, basically, last slide. If someone else, whether it's a contractor, operator, service company, whoever, university, consultant, you have some success story, some lesson learned, or some technology that you would like to share, please reach out to me, and we can try to schedule in one of the webinars or the community calls. So I'd like, this is a standard message, but I think it's important. We need to invite everyone to get active in this efforts, these initiatives on the forums, on the work that is going on, whether it's the VNV, the DWIs, the human factors, those affect all of us, in one way or another. So I'd like to extend an open invitation for anyone to jump in. Of course, one ever-present goal for DSATS is to interact with other technical sections in SPE or even outside, with IADC and other entities. So if you have connections with people in, even in other industries that we can learn something from in terms of automation, in terms of verification and validation, in terms of human factors, in terms of protocols, in terms of everything, let's discuss it and see how we can benefit and what knowledge we can bring in. And before we close, I'd like to remind that the next call will be the next community call will be on July 13, this second Thursday of the month. Again, 8:30 Central Time here in Houston. There is no invitation yet. That will come out a couple of weeks, maybe a week before the call itself. So we catch the latest membership list. And that concludes it for today. If there is any last-minute question, now is the time. If not, thank you for joining, and we'll see you in a couple of months.
One quick question. Just calling to see, is Loic's presentation posted?
Yes, I mean, there is nothing proprietary in the presentations that we are putting together for these calls, so those, they go on the website and as PDF files, so everybody can get them, get the slides, get the links that are mentioned in there, etc.
Yeah, I will send that to you, Dimitrios.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. I would like to reread it and share it with a couple of folks that I work with. That'd be awesome. Thank you.
Excellent.
Great job, Luiz.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone.